Hey everybody, this is Coach Brad Wilson coming at you with another training video. Today we are going to be playing 4 tables of 600 no limit on the streets of Ignition. Jumping into the video, looks like we have a 3-way pot brewing with ace-10 suited, 57 in there pre, so either an open at 18 I guess pre. So check to the 2-seat who bet, which I think he's going to be betting with a fairly high frequency. So check raising is probably going to be the route that I take. Although check calling is not the worst either, because we do have the best hand with ace high a fair amount of the time. I don't love having the 10 because it blocks some of his, Jack 10 of diamonds and Queen 10 of diamonds, King 10 of diamonds, his dominated diamond draws that he could have. It's a situation where you'd much rather have like the ace 7 of diamonds or the ace 8 of diamonds. So if we did decide to flat with the ace-10, it would be because we think we have the best hand, just very, very high percentage of the time. Our pot share in that situation is going to be pretty high. If he is betting with just 2 cards, he's got 4 outs, so pot shares, we're around 80%. And if he's betting with like 8-9, then we have 15 outs to improve, and we still have about 50%. So when he does get it in, we're probably up against some combo draws and sets and hands like bottom 2 pair. If he has the 2 pair in his range, I think when we get it in, our share of the pot goes down pretty dramatically, especially because, like I said, we can't get it in with a lot of the weaker draws, because he just, the flush draws with overcards, because he doesn't really, he's got Queen Jack, King Queen of diamonds. Queen high flush draw on ace high 3 ways. I think checking has a lot of merit. Six seats seemed a little suspicious, but not suspicious enough to get out of line. And the 6 seat, if he's got 2 pair, if he's got like ace X with a heart, he's likely just betting. Once the 4 seat checks back on the flop, he doesn't really have much either. So I think that we can be betting the turn even with some of our low equity hands. So a hand like King Queen with the Queen of Hearts, once the 6 seat passes up his option to bet, we just pick up the pot with a very high frequency. So I feel like we should be betting there most of the time. Once the 6 seat checks, he just doesn't really have much of a value range. He can have the nut flush and be going for a check raise, but that's really it. We'll be folding the queen 9, should be defending the jack 5 and folding the jack 6. Looks like I may have went for a short bathroom break. And for what it's worth, not much value in this information. But when I go for a bathroom break, just thought it might be funny for you to know. Basically, my wife plays and yells out what I have, and I make my decisions that way. Not the most optimal system, but I guess there's worse. It's better than timing out your aces. Queen 9 checking with middle pair. Think it is quite reasonable. Villain does not stab. If villain does stab, we're obviously not folding. Once villain checks back, maybe he's got some ace high that he's hoping to get to showdown. Maybe he's got some middling pocket pairs or 9x himself. Occasionally he can check back king high. And sometimes he just doesn't have anything. The king queen, I kind of want to see what happened. So under the gun opens and we just take the pot 3 ways. Take the flop 3 ways. So this is a board that interacts with mine and the 3 seats ranges very well. I don't think the 1 seat is c-betting too lightly here. So we are proceeding obviously with a hand as strong as king queen, but we're a little cautious. We don't feel super great. We do end up folding the turn. I think folding some, calling some is probably okay, but we can fold because we pick up a lot of backdoor diamonds, a lot of combo draws, and we have some better hands in our range. The queen's at the bottom right. Looks like we just gotta... We're 6-handed. It's a full ring game, but we're playing 6-handed and just a button versus big blind type of war. Despite the fact that the 8 seat has not opened yet after 12 hands, queens is just to get it in and move on with life. And we flop good. Oh! Oh mama. Queen ball on the river pocket. Ace-9 deuce rainbow versus Miss C-bet. Not a board I'm going to be attacking super light. I feel like villain typically has a hand that he wants to get the showdown. King queen, I expect him to be betting. So looking at our tables right now, trying to spot the weaker players. The top left, I'm not sure. The 6 seat doesn't have a full buy-in, but who knows? Defending the 10s versus the cutoff open. We can 3-bet the tens, we can flat the tens, sort of a mixed strategy. We'll probably be check calling this board. We have a lot of Jack X in our range. We have King Queen. We have a lot of straight draws. Calling one and then done with the tens seems appropriate. If we have a hand like Ace Jack, we're likely calling 2. Hand like King Queen, likely calling 3. So at the top right, nobody jumps off the page. The 6 seed and the 3 seed are both short stacks. So bottom right, everybody looks to be a full stack. I don't really see any weaker players. Flatting the 3s at the top left is a little speculative, depending on the frequency with which I think villain is betting this board. If he's just betting this board with his whole range, flatting is going to be okay. But we do have a lot better hands that we can call with 7x, 8x, 9s and 10s that we're likely flatting, straight draws, even ace king high I like a lot better than the 3s there. The reason I like ace king is because it's likely that it is the best hand as it is, and if we hit an ace or a king, villain will try to rep the ace and the king, so we'll get additional bets from our villain. Limping with the 8s, likely going for a limp 3-bet versus villain. That's pretty aggressive. I don't love my small bet here on the flop. I think I should just check. Check call that strategy seems fine. Let the villain bet with a lot of just really, really bad hands. Flatting ace 10 on the button, playing 5-handed. I think it's fine. Have to watch out for the 4-seat squeezing, but he only has 20 hands, and yeah, he only has 20 hands. No and. Villain check calling with the ace on the 9-10-3 board. With we opt to check back the turn. The turn, I don't really feel like the 8 seat's very balanced when he check calls. I feel like the turn it improves his 8-9 type hands, his Jack-9, potentially like Jack-9 to an open ender, hand like Queen-9. He's also going to have 7s that pick up some additional equity, 6s, 5s. It's pretty rare that card beats us, but it's also kind of tough to get multiple streets if we keep firing, because now we have all the straights, we have the top 2 pair. We just have a massive range advantage, in my opinion, on the turn, so we opt to check back and try to get 1 street of value. Now we need to really consider sizings, because we do have some 9x in our range. How light will we be overbetting? I guess I went with the overbet to polarize our range to kind of BS and 9x, or that's the appearance. I'm not sure if he is the type of person that thinks that I'm going to be thin value betting a hand like ace 10 there on the river with that sizing. Most likely he had a hand like ace jack or ace king, and the 8 is just a really, really bad card for him. He could also have king queen and be check calling with his gutter and overs. I think that is fairly likely as well. We got a min 3-bet with our king 9. Villain has not 3-bet yet. He seems to be on the weaker side because of his stack size. Not loving it, but what can you do? And we flop top pair. The 10 pairing is actually a good card for us. We have a fair amount of 10x's in our range that we flat with, so if villain bets again, we can just give it up. Ace on the river, not so good, but not so horrible either. I guess he does have ace queen, ace jack, especially with that sizing. It's like, yuck, yuck. Should just be folding, giving it up. He's not betting queens or jacks. He's not betting nines. So we don't really beat any of his value. Despite getting 4-1 and only needing to be right on the river about 20% of the time. Some spots you just look at and it doesn't matter the price that you're getting. Need to be right 15% of the time, but the reality is villain's just almost never bluffing. Maybe 1% of the time or 2% of the time. Sometimes 0% of the time. It's hard to talk in absolutes in poker where somebody does something 100% of the time or 0% of the time, but I think human nature is such that people do fall in very predictable patterns where they will do something 100% of the time, and they will be not bluffing in a spot. Like they just won't be bluffing in a spot, period. The king jack at the bottom left. So villain flats our cutoff open, and we start by betting small, and villain raises us. Sort of a small raise, which is interesting. Not exactly sure what villain's trying to rep. Value range would be king 9, 3s. He could also be raising some of his gut shots with backdoors, queen jack, queen 10, jack 10 of spades and clubs and hearts. I don't think there's tons of merit to betting the river. It's just not a spot where villain has a lot of marginal worse hands. Ace 3, I just don't get at all. So we got two interesting hands going on at the same time. Open the jacks. King jack is obviously just a flat. Villain leads into us with the jacks, and we opt to flat. We don't know anything about villain. We do have some ace-x in our flatting range. We just have the best hands so often. And what happened with our king jack? Villain checks back the turn, and we value bet the river. Villain called us with second pair. It's a fairly optimistic call on his part. The reason I say that is because we're not really ever value betting worse, so I guess he beats ace 4 and ace deuce, but I'm not sure that those hands even bet the river because they do have some showdown value themselves. The hands that don't have showdown value on 3-5 jack, They all make a pair on the turn. I mean, it's very hard to imagine. It's very hard to imagine us getting to the river with a hand that doesn't have showdown value, like a just dry king queen high. Seems very unlikely that we could be bluffing with on the river. So despite the fact that villain did turn a pair, I just don't think that pair is it's not gonna be good. And that is a great example of a spot where it's just very hard to find bluffs in our range because of the run out. So you can fold most of your stuff and start calling it probably like queen jack. Flatting the queen jack on the button. Deuce deuce 7, not much we can do. Continue with all of our pairs, and ace jack or ace 10 plus is going to be just fine. Probably ace 10 plus, given that this villain seems to be fairly aggressive. I imagine he's c-betting that board with 100% of the range that he's raising with preflop. And if you want to run those numbers, if he's raising 35% and betting the top 35%, I think ace 10 is doing just fine, equity-wise. And the thing is, too, when you flat your ace highs there and your small pocket pairs, you have to be prepared to face future heat from the 2-seat, given that he is an aggressive type player and he feels like he has a range advantage. If you know that he's the type of player to exploit a perceived range advantage, that's very, very crucial information. And if he's just always betting the flop and always betting the turn, when you look at a hand like ace 10 and you feel like it's not doing very well, it's actually doing very well against his entire range. It's 35% of his opening hands. And also you could say maybe he doesn't continue betting on the turn with some hands that have showdown value themselves, like ace king and ace queen and some of his small pocket pairs. So you can eliminate some of the more marginal hands that beat you, which kind of makes him even more bluff heavy. Squeaking a couple bucks out of the 1-seat with our king jack. Limp on the button by the 7-seat is a pretty good sign. We like button limps in these parts. And pot size bets, those are okay too. Opening the 9s, flatting the A7, pretty easy stuff. C-betting the 10-8-6 board. It's a little marginal. We have a bunch of flush draws. We have 2-pair. We have a bunch of top pairs that we can C-bet instead. But I don't think betting is absolutely atrocious. It's like a blocker and equity denier. It's kind of hard to get called by worse. We block a lot of the worst, 8-9 is one of the worst hands that can call us. Betting on the Ace-10-7. I think it's not the end of the world, but again, I would probably prefer a check with my 10. Pretty nice flop for our Ace-6 at the bottom left. Queens, obvious value squeeze at the top right, defending the 8-10 suited. That is a good flop for us with the 8-10. Again, we could check raise, although I probably prefer just check calling. Our pair has enough showdown value. Villain can continue betting. I think when we get it in here, our equity is just not really where it needs to be. I don't think Villain's folding king queen, ace queen, even queen jack onto the flop check raise. So oftentimes we're just going to see a turn with a weird pot size and a range that includes lots of draws. We're folding out the hands that we want Villain to have, is like ace jacks and random over c-bet type hands. I think it's very, very important when you have a hand like the nut flush draw, you have a hand like a pair plus flush draw, to consider the range that is c-betting and how your hand does against that range. And it's also very important to consider the range that Villain's going to be getting it in with, so that we can sort of see our equity when we get it in. I don't think it's too incredibly difficult to turn those situations where our share of the pot should be very, very high and it should be a very, very profitable situation, into playing them a little over aggressively and reducing our share of the pot and making it a much less profitable situation. Getting 3-bet with the king-9, I actually wouldn't mind giving this guy a 4-bet. I feel like he's played pretty tight in his first 8 hands and maybe trying to take advantage of that, but I guess we'll never know. I do think it is a pretty good spot to 4-bet. If y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot me an email, brad@enhanceYourEdge.com. I want to thank y'all very much for listening to me, and until next time, good luck at the tables.